What's happening, YouTube? Let's see if we can do this video. We haven't talked in a long time, so let's talk. I'm out here kind of in the woods in my neighborhood, and I figure I just kind of give you a rundown on who am I? What's been going on? Where did I come from? What's this all about? Who is Haze Anderson in the first place? So I started out as a drummer in Los Angeles, and that obviously didn't work out well. So I went back to my career in IT, we'll say. And, back and forth, rocky road here and there. I eventually decided to move back to Tennessee in 2016. And that's when all the tragedies and trials and tribulations kind of hit me all in the past 8 years, we'll say. What I decided to do was come back to Tennessee and just become a recruiter for IT, find professionals and place them with companies. And I moved back with my parents, but only temporarily. My first goal was to find a place to live in another city nearby outside of Nashville. But what ended up happening is that, and I didn't realize this, is that my father this whole time was a narcissist. And I moved back into his spider's web. That's a long story, and it's going to be darn near impossible to convince you that my father is actually a narcissist. If you understand what I'm talking about, you have no problem believing me. But if you don't, then you already don't even, you think, oh, he's just somebody who likes to look at himself in the mirror. What's wrong with that? But that's not really what I'm here to talk about. I'm just bringing this up because it has everything to do with everything that comes next. So what ended up happening to me was you basically find out that someone is trying to destroy your life. So naturally you run away again. And I ran away all the way to Portland. And this is the second time that I'd lived in Portland. Went back to Portland for a second time. And ended up working down in San Francisco shortly after that. And I was miserable there. That was one of the most miserable experiences I've ever experienced. I had a mediocre apartment. It was nice, you know what I'm saying? But no real amenities per se. Like it wasn't like a really luxury apartment. And I was paying $2,500 a month for that place back in 2017. And this was in San Jose. And let me tell you something. I was very lucky to find that place. The competition to find apartments, and that was one of the cheapest, most affordable ones that I could find on top of that. Because we're talking, you're not even really going to be making any money by the time you're done with that gig and you move on to the next one. So that was pretty miserable. I ended up coming back to Tennessee again after that. And that is when I discovered this whole synthesizer thing, making this music for YouTube, hardware jamming, we'll call it. Now, you may already know I was trained in this stuff back in the mid-90s. So I was coming back to something that I already had sort of kind of left behind. And being a drummer, it was just like a kid in a candy store, really. I just really enjoy this so very much. And, I had no idea how popular, in a sense, this whole phenomenon would become. I was just doing it because, really, honestly, I had nothing else to do. I mean, I was trying to understand, right? I'm sitting here looking at my career, figuring out what I'm supposed to do with my life, and I'm getting no answers. And all of a sudden, it's like, hey, go make music. So that's what I did, as I just set about making music. Now, I don't want to talk about gas and dealing with all of the pressure of buying this and keeping up the Joneses, that, and so forth. But for the most part, none of that really affects me. And having all of the training that I had in the mid-90s, I was able to know exactly what I wanted by reading the technical specs of the devices. I was already fully trained in MIDI. The only thing that I didn't know was analog, subtractive synthesis, and how hard is that really to learn. So, what's been going on lately? Good question. I really have been at a crossroads this whole time trying to figure out what I've been wanting to do with my life. Not really trying to find any kind of an answer to any calling or none of that kind of stuff. So at one point I ended up moving to Phoenix, came back to Nashville once again, lost my girlfriend in that process. So all of my synths and drum machines at that point, all the way to Phoenix, all the way back. It was a very hot summer too. And when I came back, each time is a different iteration. But I didn't really understand. I think it was when I came back that time. That's when I really discovered that my father was a narcissist. And that's when I realized, okay, I've got to take some major moves to get away from this whole incident. So I managed to escape to another city for a short while, living at a pretty crappy place. And I actually got a really good job again. When I say a really good job, I mean making a lot of money. It turns out that it was a den of vipers, as our friend Stephen Mendez quoted, and he told me one time. It really was an awful job. And looking back, there was probably nothing I could do to salvage that job, so it was not a good fit, unfortunately. And the only way that I got into that job was because I knew someone, and he, of course, networked and made sure that they were favorable to me during the interview process. Welcome to the real world, folks. And then, of course, once I got in, it was dog eat dog. It was a really terrible job. So after that was done, well, during that process where I was living, somebody next door, this is a really crazy thing that happened to me during January, committed suicide. And that happened. It really didn't impact me too very much, but it really made me think about a lot of things after that happened. And moving forward, that place that I lived in, I think, is what, flashing forward, caused me to get the kidney stone, drinking the water out of that horrible place. That's another story for another day. But as fate would have it, and this is definitely a story for another day, my landlord kicked me out of that place. I don't even go into the details. Who cares whose fault it was? It doesn't really matter. I will say this. I never missed a month's rent. I always paid on time. I did complain about the crappy place that he provided for us, however. So in this particular case, the squeaky wheel gets kicked out. And during this time, right before I was kicked out of my apartment, one of the worst things in my life happened. I lost my mother. She died of cancer, and I'm still very upset about this whole thing. That's been coming up on 2 years now that she's passed. So I was faced, and there is the video, the big move, and that's where I was when the big move happened. I am leaving out one very important detail, though. I have a second career in audiovisual, where I am able to go and set up lighting, video walls, audio for corporate conventions, and there's lots of places that do that. You can get on board with them and join a crew and learn all of the details, and But I did this all during 2023, and I made $13,000 working my ass off. It was a great job. I loved it. I met and worked with so many wonderful people. I got to work, didn't meet her, of course, but I got to work for a Dolly Parton record release party in Nashville. Got to help set it up, and that was really cool, really special. $13,000 for the whole year. Not to mention, who knows what it cost me in gas, parking. Nashville is insane right now. Downtown Nashville is utterly insane right now. It's like New York City in the sense of parking. Not like New York City, of course, and there's no comparison, but it's trying very hard to be as much like New York City as it can. Really what it is it's like Las Vegas. So I don't recommend moving to Nashville unless you enjoy an hour commute into the city, because you're not going to want to live in the city. There's plenty of great places out here, though, in the country. So lost my mom in 2023, moved back home, and at this point, it's my dad and my brother. And let me tell you something, 2024 was hell, folks. I was doing everything I could to get my career back, because I knew I needed the money. I was doing everything I could. I thought I had an opportunity to move to Florida and to get my career back through working for someone in IT and move down to Florida. Florida's a very hard place to move into, folks. It's a very hard place. If you're a bartender in entertainment, that kind of stuff, sure, easy to get a job, that seasonal work around the tourist locations. I'm talking about having, a real life in Florida, getting involved with getting into with a real company in Florida. It's pretty hard. Like, it's really closed off. And I've tried, and I'm still going to try to get a job down there. I'm going to keep the job. Well, I'm jumping ahead. I'm going to keep the job that I've got now, and I'm hoping that I can keep it and live in Florida. So 2024 was absolutely insane for me, folks. It culminated in December with me getting a kidney stone. I actually had 2 kidney stones, one on both sides. I don't know how I was fortunate enough that one just sort of passed by, but the other one gave me 5 days of some of the worst pain I've ever had in my entire life. And the bill for that came, no job, no insurance. Let me tell you something, folks. I still love capitalism. You heard it right. It's like, it's terrible. What else are you going to do? I'm sticking with this system, and I will fight for this system, and I will pay my bills. It's just the way it goes. The only thing is, I mean, I can't say about a kidney stone, but whatever. January rolls by, and I get an opportunity to interview with somebody. Let me tell you something. I worked my ass off all 2024. You hear these stories about people. I sent out 500 resumes. Folks, I sent out 500 resumes, at least 500 resumes in 2024. I applied to so many jobs. I got in like with maybe 5. One of the second or third interviews that I got, the day of the interview, I found my brother's dead in the basement. He had passed away the night before from a heart attack. That was back in June, back in summer. That really, again, lose my mother. Now I lost my brother. His 2 kids don't have a father anymore. I've never had kids, so I'm going to do what I can to make sure that they're taken care of. But, so, I mean, dude, I'm just saying, you can't give up. You just got to keep fighting. You got to keep fighting, and you have to keep changing your tactics. You can't, like, if it doesn't work one day, you've got to figure out, what did I do wrong? And the most important thing is to get feedback. And I was having a hard time getting feedback, but I finally got some feedback and a way to go through and figure out what I could do to get through to these recruiters, get past these recruiters and get to the interviews and let them know, yes, I am the person that you need for this job. And that finally happened. And let me tell you, it was still a very long struggle because I was so gun shy, once bitten, twice shy, that even after they gave me the job offer and I accepted, I was like, okay, if something's going to, and I'm not a pessimist. I'm just saying, okay, I was waiting. Now, what's going to happen during the onboarding process that's going to cause a glitch that's going to basically say, like, you might not have this job after all? Thankfully, we've got it. This is my 3rd week. I've already got my first paycheck. As you can tell, I don't like to jump the gun. I like to make sure that things are stable before I report news on these kinds of things. And 303 day recently passed, and I'm like, okay, cool, we got all stuff out of the way. I can start thinking about doing some jams again. And then this happened. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I got this nice big bump right here. Today is Wednesday, and it was actually a week ago Wednesday when I first felt it starting to happen. It's an old root canal, and this is my fault, folks. I stopped going to the dentist. You can't stop going to the dentist. It's like, oh, it'll be fine. You got to get those root canals looked up, especially after 10 years or so, after a decade. This thing, oh my goodness gracious. This could have killed me. This could have killed me. That kidney stone could have killed me. We live in the 21st century, thankfully. And that's what doctors and dentists do. They save lives and save smiles, for that matter as well. So I apologize for my horrible teeth and my horrible smile, but you know what? I always just say, like, I'm part British anyways, right? Sorry, that's a bad joke. But we definitely always have to appreciate our heritage. And my wisdom teeth should have been taken out a long time ago. I'm not blaming my parents for that. We didn't have very much money back then, so they really couldn't afford to do that. Really, I should have taken it upon myself in my 30s once I started getting a good job, just to go in there and have it done. Maybe, well, that's another story. Then we're going to worry about that. Nobody's fault but my own. So Friday, this thing, the pain. By Friday night, it really didn't hit me until Friday night. And that's kind of too late on the weekend. Man, if I really begged and pleaded and cried, I might have found a dentist around here to see me over the weekend. Thankfully, I was able to see one on Monday. First thing, they saw me, and it's an abscessed tooth, massive amount of infection underneath it. And right now I'm dealing with what's called a fistula, and it hasn't popped yet. So I'm not going to get you those gory details, but it should pop here pretty soon. And in about 3 or 4 days, I'm going to go back to the dentist and we'll have it extracted, and we'll just start working from there. The shadows are going to fight me now no matter what I do. It looks like a ring or something right there. But it is really beautiful out here. Spring is just around the corner, and I really hope that everybody's doing well. Let me tell you something. The synergy around stuff like this, I know it's in the air. I know a friend of mine on Twitch who streams a lot of video games, he actually also just went through an abscessed tooth. In fact, he was at the dentist just today to have it extracted. It's insane. So if anything has happened to you, I wish that any pain and suffering that is in your way, any problems with your family and relationships, that they get solved. But of course, that's only going to happen through your own actions and through the love that you give around to the people around you. Well, with this, I'm not sure what else to say. That's who Haze Anderson is. I'm just somebody trying to find their way in the world who just happens to love making music. And that's what we're doing. So what's the future of this channel? Just more of the same, really. I will say I'm going to be taking a bit of a break, though. I'm actually thinking about, once again, just taking the whole studio down and restarting over. I've got the room that I'm in down. It's in right now. It's in the basement. It's a really nice, what we call the man cave. I just sort of portioned off a small section for myself. I didn't want to take over the whole thing. But I can take over the whole thing now, and I can start setting up shelves down there, lighting and all kinds of stuff. So I might start, might just go ahead and actually just take everything down. I know a lot of people are like, what? But I learn so much every time I rebuild, and I tend to make some improvements. And, the cabling cabling is always going to be an issue. I was worried about that I made too many custom cables, too many custom links, and I wouldn't be able to use them later. Nah, you'll find a use for them. Don't worry. You will find a use for them. So that's about it. I think I'm just going to take that break, tear the studio down. We'll do some more before we do that. But I also really need to start thinking about taking all these songs and making albums. So I still want to thank the Synth Samurai for that first invitation that he handed to me to join in that first Kumite, because that did teach me how to actually master. I mean, I've got so much more to learn, but at least get me started in the process of producing something that is going to be reasonably compatible on something else on Spotify. I was always worried about my mixes being too low in volume, and this is the answer. I can tell you, if you have any questions, I'll explain more, but that is the answer. So from here, why not take all of our jams and actually turn them into tracks? And that's my challenge to y'all for 2025. Thank you, YouTube. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.